I was working at home. I was coding my own thing. It was great. Gave me a lot of money that I could use to buy a house together with my wife, and it was fantastic. But at some point, it was like, my God, I don't see anybody. It's me and my cat here all day long. When art is easy, first of all, you cannot learn anything if the learning is easy. The only way you learn something is by struggle. And I don't mean struggle, like oh struggle, but you have to bang your head against a problem, solve the problem, and keep on going. And so, the next ingredient is practice. You have to practice, because you only know if you got it after all those moments were like, oh, this could have been so good. Yeah, and there are always things you can do with lights. There are always things you can do, well, if you're using film, different film stocks, different techniques, using black and white film with a yellow or orange filter in front of the camera, for example, all those things. That's the beauty, isn't it?
Hi, and welcome to Behind the Lens this week. I'm Andrew, and we've got Paolo with us today. So, hi, Paolo. Welcome.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, that accent is very distinctive, but tell everybody where you are in the world, because it's a bit different from where your accent is.
Well, the accent is from Southern Alabama. No, it is from North Italy. That's where I grew up. I was born in Italy. I grew up there for the first 30 years of my life. I had a brief stint in California for about 22 years. And then 9 years ago, my wife and I moved to beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, in the east coast of the U.S. It's hot and humid as hell here.
Right. Yeah. So that's a fair bit of traveling in, different parts of the world. So is your studio now there? Has your studio been everywhere you've been? Tell us a little bit about your studio.
Yeah, well, I have a home studio. It's a very, when we moved to Charleston, that was, for several reasons. One was to, be able to buy a house, which is next to impossible in California. Thank you very much. And so the plan since the beginning was to have a place that could be transformed into a studio. It's just one of the bedrooms, plus there is another one, the spare bedroom that is for the private changing, the change room for my clients. And this is all, there is the magic happens all here. I'm a studio beast. I'm a studio animal. I don't like going outside. I don't like, hold the equipment. I've done it. I do it every now and then. It's inevitable, but it stresses the heck out of me. And so I like to be comfortable in the studio where I have all my
the familiarity. Yeah,
I'm ready. If I need something, I have it. Some people love to go outside. There is a photographer I know. She loves to do, these big trips around the world. To me, it's just like spelling hell.
Yeah. So you said you've got a different room there for getting changed. What type? I know the type of photography you do, and I love it. I've looked at your work, and it's lovely.
Thank you.
Can you tell everybody else what is it that you do?
So in a nutshell, I do beauty and boudoir portraiture in a style that is reminiscent of the 1930s Hollywood. And I always have to be careful there, because obviously I know what I mean by that, and I'm trying to give a shorthand there. Many times people think that I shoot vintage style photography. The style is reminiscent, is inspired by the 1930s Hollywood. I don't shoot vintage. I mean, if people want to dress with vintage clothing and create a film noir scene, I'm all for it. But that is not what I require. There is not what what it means to be 1930s Hollywood is a certain type of glamour that was invented back then. It is black and white photography. It's film photography. It's done with continuous lighting, with spotlights, with Fresnel lights, high contrast. It's a funny thing that many times when I see it described by others, they're talking about the soft lighting. It's not soft lighting.
No.
It's hard lighting. It's, very pronounced.
It's not the 1980s.
shadows.
It's not the 1980s.
No,
and
totally see the thing. Right. The thing is, of course, a period doesn't mean there is one style, because like today, there are different photographers, different styles. Andrew, you have your style. I have my style. The next guy or gal has a different style. So, there isn't a. But in the context of 1930s Hollywood, there were a few players. Now, before George Horrell, who was the guy who really defined it, a lot of people were shooting with soft, with soft focus lenses, were basically with what they call them, soft focus lenses. So,
tiny bit of Vaseline on almost to make them soft,
or something like that. But the lenses they had back then. So we have also to remember what kind of cameras were using at that time. They weren't using 35 millimeter cameras. They were not invented. In certain cases, they were invented, but they were not common. And if you were a photographer for MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, they didn't want a little piddly 35 millimeter camera.
10-8 plate cameras.
Yeah, they wanted an 8x10 view camera, a big negative. Especially because they had to edit it, to retouch it. You can't retouch on a 35 millimeter. How can you retouch on this?
Yeah.
So they had a big ass negative, and they would go there with a pencil and the paint.
So do you use that now? Do you still use film, or what do you use for your medium?
Okay, let me bring it to the frame. I forgot to. Okay, this is my main workhorse. So that's the Mamiya RZ67, and it's a medium format camera. I do have a couple of.
I used one of them. I used one of them for about 15 years. Exactly that camera.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. You twist the back on it, don't you? You rotate the back.
It's I'd be for revolving back.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So here I have a few rolls of 120 film.
Yep.
Now, it's not that I don't use digital, but if you want to do a certain type of photography, then this is an additional tool. And if you used it, that the perspective on these cameras is different from a perspective for a 35 millimeter camera.
Yeah.
You can. There is a guy by the name of Brennison. A few years ago, Petapixel and all the other blogs were talking about the Brennison or Brennizer method. Basically, this guy said, "Oh, I love the medium format effect, but you can't get that with a 35 millimeter camera." So what he did, he used a long lens and took like 6-7 photos and stitched them all together. So you get that. Now, the effect of using a long lens, like 135 millimeter lens, a short distance, and still you're framing all your subject, which is what these cameras can do. It's different than using 135 millimeter lens and walking, far back so that you can frame the subject. The perspective changes, and so but using a 35 millimeter digital camera and stitching 6 photos together is way more laborious than just using one of these cameras and use film. There's nothing wrong with film. Why not use film? There is this idea
Yeah, I mean,
nowadays.
it's whatever. The beauty of today is it's what anyone likes to do, and there's no rules. Everyone can do whatever they like,
No,
can't they? And that's
exactly.
what's nice about it. So, what got you into photography? When did you start?
Technically, I started in the late 70s. That was my father, like many of us. We were taught by our fathers and generally fathers, because I don't know why. Excuse me a second. Uh, I just need to take one thing. I have a bit of allergy, and if I start coughing in convulsive way, I need to get a little lozenge. So my father was the photographer. I always thought that he was the artist of the family, even though I did go to the Art Institute for 5 years and study visual arts there and all that jazz. But he's the guy who introduced me to photography. We had our classic dark room in the bathroom, the whole shebang. We were loading bulk
Did he do it?
rolls.
Did he do it professionally? Was it
No,
some?
no,
It
no. It was his
was a hobby,
hobby.
right?
Say this is an old roll,
Yeah,
bulk
yeah.
roll of Ilford HP5, which is what we were using at that time.
Hmm.
And no, it was very good. My father was sort of a photojournalist kind of photographer. He loved that. I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I like the preparation. I like the setup. I like the creating the story and using photography as in a pictorial way. So
So, when did you turn
yeah,
professional? Have you always? Is this
early 2000s, early 2000s.
right?
I
So,
spent 30 years in technology as a software engineer. So it's funny that I'm back to film, because I was one of the first ones who said, "Yay, digital photography! I love it." I spent 30 years coding, and so bits and bytes were exactly where I was more comfortable.
and where did you do that? Was that from? Was that why you were in
Go-
California?
Yeah, I was in California. I was getting tired of software development. There are things that are wonderful about software development where you build something out of thin air. At the same time, I was missing, working with my hands. There is something about that. That's what I believe. There is something about the tangible experience that is so human. It's actually at the heart of being human. And that's why, as photographers, we value uh, creating physical artwork, because what you can touch and hold and see with your eyes, not as a backlit
Yeah, yeah.
screen, but as a texture piece of paper or canvas, has a completely different value. And I was missing it. So, back and forth a few times of different ventures. I spent some time in Hollywood since I was in California. It was distant. I lived 8 hours away in Santa Cruz, but I had my stint in Hollywood. It was great, great to make me understand that no, I wasn't cut for that. and so, um, and so I thought, you know what? But I do love the camera, the visual arts. Um, I always loved the visual.
Right.
And
So is it that
so,
connection then as well? Because
yeah,
when you're working with code, it's very sterile, isn't it? There's no the connection's not there, and you know.
it's less sterile than it seems. There is a lot of artistry goes into it. A lot of artistry, a lot of passion. The funny thing is, all the geeks and my colleagues I met there, we were all connected in similar ways. So there's coding, music, science fiction, coding, art, science fiction, Frazetta, coding, science fiction is always there.
Yeah,
some
and
some were bakers, So, there's just all.
But what I'm
Mhm.
because I get what you're saying, but the difference with photography, and you're talking about the tangibles and
Mhm.
things,
Yes.
you've chosen an art form where you're communicating with people.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
something to do with it, do you think?
No, it is. The technology world is an odd one. Um, there is it, because I know it so well. It is very clear for me that the trite stereotype of the computer genius being fairly uncomfortable, fairly um, socially uncomfortable is totally true. And so um, all these inventions, all these things, I met somebody locally here who's convinced that running meetings in virtual reality is going to be the future. So no, how can you tell this? We just went through COVID where we were forced to be distanced, and we were socially starved. We couldn't wait to go back to be face to face. But that is the mindset of the nerd.
Yeah,
They,
yeah.
okay, and to me, I was feeling a little lonely. I was working at home. I was coding my own thing. It was great. Gave me a lot of money that I could use to buy a house together with my wife, and it was fantastic. But at some point, it was like, my God, I don't see anybody. It's me and my cat here all day
So
long.
so obviously you took that step.
Hmm.
When was the step that you decided to go, right, this is it? What did your wife think about it? What was she on board? Were you
She's
because it's a
always
big leap.
been, yeah, she's always been very supportive. I'm very, very, very lucky. This, I don't, how long you've been in photography, Andrew? Can I ask? Can
All
I
my
revert the
life.
question?
All
All
my
your life.
life.
So I had two companies previously. And so I've been in business for about 24 years now. I had an e-commerce in motorcycling and computer. I had a company. Uh, I went back to software development. I did software for um, visualization of 3D content. Both companies were so much easier to run. I was expecting to be successful in photography, and it's been the biggest struggle of my life. Not technically, not artistically, but commercially.
Mhm.
The commercial part of it was and is um, one of the most challenging things. And that is exactly because of the human factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the discovery that the quality of your photography matters almost nothing to the commercial success, that was a very, very, very hard reality to swallow.
Yeah.
And because, and I don't mean I mean, we know there are photographers who are just barely scraping by technically and are fantastic on the commercial side, and then there are people who are, I admire, incredible artists, and they're struggling or they're giving up.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a
because
very strange thing, isn't it? Because we're all you go for perfection in what you do because it's the
yes.
nature of being a photographer. You want that perfection, and some people think they've got it. I'd never think you have because I've taken many a photograph in my life and gone, wow, that's amazing. And
Hmm.
2 months later, you look at it and go, if I'd just done this, and if you live, and you want to then go, yeah, I've got to move on. And that's what's nice because you can. Um, but the general public, it doesn't mean a great deal to them in a lot
You
of
tell
ways.
them that you use a medium format camera, that doesn't mean squat to them. They don't know the first thing, and
No.
they shouldn't. Um, are they able to even visually recognize it? I can recognize. No, I saw portraits that from other photographers. I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. And I looked at a portrait after the first impression thing that was done with a with the large format camera. And sure enough, after a little bit of digging, yes, that was done. So I can recognize the perspective. And I think that the everyday person can too. They will see that there is a difference if you're shooting something with a 4x5, an 8x10, or a 35 millimeter camera. They will see that there is a difference in quality. They
I
will not
think
know which one it is.
no. I think one of the key things that people forget is you've got photographers, I suppose, that can do amazing photography,
Hmm.
and they've then got to sell their own art to that
Hmm.
client. And there's some people that are maybe mediocre photographers and really good at selling, and other
Yes.
people that aren't. And that's part and parcel of it. Has any part of that been the hard part for you? What part of it
Absolutely.
is so? Which
Yeah.
part has really struggled for you?
So the thing is, to me, the technical part is the what gets me excited,
Hmm.
and it is what it is easy,
Yeah.
because I never understood when people say, "Oh, I'm not good at technical things." I'm like, "What do you mean? You just have to read the instructions." It's just there's nothing logic. I've
Yes.
been
It's a logic
I've been
mindset, isn't it?
I've been so completely steeped into logic and reasoning for decades. It's like, give it to me, I'll take it. I mean,
I
it
think that's
just.
the thing as well, isn't it? You said before, I mean, logic and reasoning, but there's
Mhm.
a lot of creativity in that as well.
Yes, absolutely. But and the creativity part is fun. So the funny thing is this: I always loved portraiture, but by nature I'm was maybe an incredibly shy person. And so I remember the first time I took a class. I was in California. I was took a class with a photographer. He brought two or three models, classic thing, group of people, and a group of photographers and two or three models. When he was um, guiding them, asking the models to do something, and then we take turns and do the same exact photos. Great. Then he said, "Okay, now you can take turns on asking the model to do something for you." And I went like, totally
Totally froze. What do I do?
completely frozen. I mean, like, just do what you did with the other guy. Yeah, great. That was great. And so that kind of shyness kept me back for a long time.
So, how did
So
you overcome that? What did you do to overcome that situation?
the same way I overcame opening my mouth and speaking. The first time I landed, in '94, I landed in California, and I had to ask for opening utilities, phone, what have you, driver license, and you feel like I had barely any kind of scholastic English, no conversational skills at all, no practice. I could read The Lord of the Rings, which I did, but I could not, speak like we are doing now. Um, you gotta do it. You do it. You you force yourself to do it, and then in the quiet of your own mind, just like, oh my God, what did I just say? And then you're like, oh, let me tell you, the first time I did a portrait session, probably the first few months, I would go through it. I'll be so nervous. I was so completely, exhausted at the end. Couldn't look at the photos for 2 days.
Right. So,
Um,
when you say you were nervous about what they thought of you or whether
yes,
you were going to get it right? It was what
yes,
they, yeah. Okay.
everything. So all right. Let me put it this way: I never liked doing things sounds stupid to say, or sounds like I'm self-serving. Seriously, I never like doing things the easy way, and it's not because I want to make my life hard, but okay. I remember I was watching some Subrai's training. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she's great.
She's the she. A lot of people won't know who she is.
So Sue Bryce is this, fantastic photographer from New Zealand, and she years ago she um, sort of created a revival of glamour boudoir photography. At that time, she got discovered by Creative Live, which was a great company. I think it's still. Anyway, Sue Bryce has posing. She knows how to pose people. Okay, she has posing down to an art form, and that is what I was looking at. But back then, she, by her own admission, she couldn't use a strobe to save her life. And so her typical setup was using a window, using some curtains in front of the window, having the subject just outside the frame of the window to get the feathering of the window. And I thought, no, what if I don't get the right sun? I'm going to be enslaved to a window. I don't want that. That's just nuts. That sounded like insanity,
Yeah,
because
I mean, I get you, because I actually have a beautiful window in
uh-huh.
my studio, and there's only certain days that the sun, if you've got a lovely sunny day, I will
Yes,
use it, but I can't use it
right,
all the time. But
right,
it is there, and I will use it because the sun, and after 3 o'clock, it's no good. It's gone. So,
exactly.
but it's the rest of the time, you can't use it, and but yeah.
It becomes a dependency that I didn't want to have. Plus, because of my background, my experience in Hollywood, I knew that no movie in Hollywood is shot with natural light from
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
window. um, if there is a
If there's a
because
real window, there's acetate all over it to change it to, yeah,
because they might need to do 15 takes,
yes.
27 takes.
And you
In the
can't have the light
meantime,
changing as a cloud passes by.
so yes, they have a window. They have a 10K HMI outside, a big light, and they have, possibly they just put some gel on the window just to have it,
Color
not
corrected.
too bright, so
Yeah.
that it doesn't overexpose. I thought I cannot do that, so I thought, okay, I gotta have lighting. So I used lighting. So the first time you're doing a portrait, and yes, you try to keep in mind the poses, this, the arm here, there, and so you're giving the instruction to the person while you're checking the lighting, while you're doing. I'm always shooting in manual because I like to make my life hard. No, I'm always using film lenses even on digital cameras because, um, well, budget constraints, lenses are expensive. I can buy a very good lens, a 50 millimeter lens or an 85 millimeter lens for next to nothing, but they're manual. So I'm there, man. And I love the manual. I love having an aperture ring that I can grab and change on the spot. I hate going through little knobs on the camera. Just uh, it's funny because actually, I think the Sigma recently, maybe last year or 2 years ago, they started introducing a modern lens, but with an aperture ring, a physical aperture
Yeah.
ring.
Yeah.
They they heard enough people like me complaining, and so you know how it is. You're giving the instructions. You're looking for the expression. You're trying to entertain the person. You're trying to change the lighting. You're looking at all those things. You're focusing. It's a lot. At the end, I was exhausted, and because I fundamentally always think that when I say something, well, maybe not now, but initially, the person could immediately hear from my tone that I was just faking it. It's imposter syndrome. Then
Right. Yeah.
It would be so exhausting that at the end I would literally lie down on bed for a half hour and not look at the photos for at least 2 days, and then after 2 days I'll be like, okay, let's see. Missed focus again, missed focus. And that's why I always use a tripod all the time.
Yeah.
It just I know that my hands are not, of course, with this beast you cannot do
Well, in the
right.
studio, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm to be totally truthful, Paolo, I use a tripod about 90% of the time.
there you go. Yeah,
Very rarely do I take it off. There's only the odd time if I'm doing something from a funny height or something like that.
and yeah, do you use a monopod?
I have one the same as you, like that, with an arm on the side that I can slide up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I catch my fingers. If I don't turn the head right, I can catch my fingers on the side. And yes,
Yeah, they're,
you know,
they're deadly devices.
yeah. So when did you feel that you were able to look at the photographs quicker and that you were not being that imposter? That imposter syndrome can you
It took
remember
at
that
least a couple
time?
of years. Couple of
Yeah,
years.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
do you
just
think
practice.
look and you look and if you look back, did you think it made a difference to was it different for people? Were you being the imposter? Did they think you were, or was it all in your mind?
Oh no, it's all in your mind.
Yeah.
It's all in your. You know it. You know it. No.
Yeah.
Yes, we are our worst enemies. I mean, I was in another meeting yesterday. I heard the same thing from another photographer, imposter syndrome, and then the telltale signs in the speech. Yeah, because I want to keep things affordable. Why? What we're doing is a luxury, and I don't mean a luxury in the sense Cartier or Armani, or
Well, it's
it's not
not.
like
It
we're.
is. It's a luxury for the person, isn't it? It is just the same. It
It's a
has that.
treat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a treat. It's something that you don't need a portrait, but it is something nice that you can do for yourself. Probably you don't need a $1,200 smartphone. You can get by with a $600 smartphone, but you do it because it's something nice for you. But when people say, "No, I want to be," I want to keep things affordable. I can see that there is a concern there that is at the top, and which is just if it's coming out because fundamentally somebody's saying I'm not good enough. Do you know who William Branson is as a photographer? Okay, so I had the great fortune to study with him. I think this year he gave his last class. He's in his 70s, and so William Branson, for Bill Branson, BB for short. He said that one of the top portrait photographers in the U.S. He did a series of portraits, 2019, I think, for 10 CEOs, Chinese CEOs living in Australia. They called them, they flew him there, they kept him, they paid for, I don't know, the four-season hotel, they drove him everywhere, and he did 10 portraits in a few days. Each portrait was sold. We're talking one portrait, not an album, one portrait, life size, framed, canvas, hand repainted. That's what he does. He does the photo, then
Okay.
he repaints everything. Each portrait was $78,000.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that is our goal, but Branson definitely doesn't have a feeling that he's, that he's not adequate.
And I think that, yeah, and I think what people miss more than anything is the portrait is worth what it's worth to the person that's in it. Not,
Right,
and that's what it's worth, and it's what
right.
they value of themselves and how much value they put on themselves because they're the person in it and what they're willing to pay for themselves and gift themselves. And I think that's what a lot of photographers forget. And that's the key. But not everybody can afford to spend £70,000 on themselves, and that's
Very few
fine. And
can. Very
yeah,
few can.
and
Right. Right.
but
But
do you believe then it's your value that matters, or is it their value that matters? What do you think of that?
I
Where
think
do
there
you
is a
stand on that one?
I think there is a confluence there. There is a meeting of the two. Um, I believe that it all depends, though. I mean, the emotional value is the most important component from the point of view of the client.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so let me put in let me give you an example. I had a great experience recently, really a fantastic experience. I have a little display of my portraits as framed portraits at a jazz lounge downtown Charleston, and classic black and white Hollywood style, and I, by all chances, a local musician, a Grammy awarded musician, Charlton Singleton, went to the club. He's a jazz musician, so that's kind of his one of his places they visits. And so my porters and they called me and I said, "Look, I love your style. I love your black and white classical style, and my parents are 92 and 93 years old, and I'd love to have a portrait of them done." And so we did, and it was a fantastic experience. These are two incredible people, very very active in their community. The father is a retired pastor, so of course with a lot of connections in the community. And they came here at the studio. We did the portrait. It was very classical style portrait, and and I believe that when their son saw it, really he saw all the past of of his parents, the way he knows them, and now he saw a fantastic heirloom for their family. There is the emotional value there, but he connected with the style that I
Well,
have.
yeah,
And
and I
so
think
that is
that's
what I mean.
yeah, and I think that's a key thing because you do hear of photographers that are not that good, but are making lots of money because they've
Hmm.
got the marketing side of it well. But
Hmm.
I think that there is a key to still doing good work, and I still think it's important to do
Oh,
good.
yeah.
And rather than just be the salesperson, because you've got a, it's a legacy that we all leave behind as
Right.
well. And I want my legacy of my photographs to be something that I feel proud of forever, not I made a lot of money off that one photograph, but it's wrong. I want everything to be nice, but still pay the bills. And I think,
Right.
so
It's a balance, like anything.
yeah,
We need to, we want to, we care about the artistry because this is where our art,
yeah,
our heart is. And also because in my case, I believe that each artist, each portrait artist, photographer, um, should should have that goal to provide something unique, because otherwise, why are we in the market? I mean, here in Charleston, this is the wedding capital of the United States in amount of money. Of course, Vegas has way many more, but just to say, there are hundreds and hundreds of photographers because, of course, the wedding industry is appealing. How many of them are unique, though? And I don't
yeah,
mean, I don't mean to be a critic here, but I don't think that there is, and of course, you're doing weddings, so it's an incredibly tough environment. But outside that, I would say, how many photographers are really trying to have a unique voice? Or I don't know, do you think it's even necessary? Let me ask you,
Well, I think,
because maybe I'm totally off the
oh
mark.
no, I don't think you are wrong. I think it's a combination of all the factors, isn't it? There's, as you said, it's the meeting of all the factors. You know,
Yeah,
you can you can be unique, you can have your own style, as long as you're working with your client and producing what your client loves. And let's face it, they're not going to come to you and without having some form of knowledge of what you're going
hmm,
to produce. You know, they're going to look on your wall. They're going. Do you have portraits on your wall in your home? Do they have you have stuff? Yep, here we go. Yeah, right. Oh, lovely. Yeah,
that's
it,
one.
yeah. So as soon as they walk in the building, or before even, I don't know how you do what your process is to getting them in and what you do, but
Uh-huh.
they're going to
Oh,
see your work. So they've got to love that, to trust you, to want to be with you and do that in the first place. And I
right,
think that's something that can't be forgotten. You know, you can have all the marketing in the world, and there's all sorts of, but if somebody looks at the work and goes, oh, they're not going to buy it.
no, of
They
course,
have to, for you've got to produce the thing that they want. You've got to connect with them on that emotional level, but they've got to fall in love with what they see, and that is themselves. But it's still got to make them fall in love. And if it's rubbish lighting, if it's just taken, and they're not. So I do believe there is the artistry there always, and you know that's for me. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean,
I
others
mean,
might say I'm totally wrong. I don't know. But
no,
that's
but you said you've been in this all your life, so you've seen, since I can see from your looks that we are probably a similar age. I'm 60, something.
yeah. I'm a little bit younger, but
Yes,
yes, I'm in my
yeah,
mid
right.
I'm in my mid 50s now, and
Mid-50s. Okay, it's
and
the
I've
it's the gray. See that I
yeah.
shaved my beard because
You might want to be
I,
younger.
I'm like you. It gets
Yeah,
all
yeah.
gray.
I
Yeah, yeah.
don't mind. I'm not bothered.
No, that's
But
okay.
like
That's okay.
I've yes. I mean, my grandfather was a photographer. My father was a
There you go.
photographer. My uncle. So I've lived it my whole life, um, and the quality has always had to be there because it's the way I was taught. Now, whether we say that is really important, I still believe it is. I still believe it is because you you don't really see big pictures of rubbish on the wall anywhere very often, and I think, you know, there's the odd occasion because you'll walk into somebody's house and you go, crikey, look at the colours in here. I would never do and their taste, everybody's taste is slightly different. But yeah, when you see people that are doing it day in, day out, the quality's got to be there, you know. It, uh, that's the
Ex-
way I.
e- e- Yeah, except that there is one thing I noticed, which is driving me nuts. Um, there is this, at least for some time, there was this light and airy style that some photographers like to do. And problem is, I'm seeing even on printed magazines, which is troubling, um, blown highlights
Yeah,
all the freaking time, and that is, you know it, that the highlights is where digital goes to die, and die very poorly and very ugly, and that is one of the reasons why I'm using film, and,
yeah. I
and
mean,
and that is becoming very common. I mean, to a point that even some magazines, I don't want to make names, but I've seen pretty horrendous things. It seems that highlights have been sacrificed on the altar of digital.
Yeah, yeah, because it's very easy on. It's one of the hardest things with that digital, isn't it? It always has been the highlight tonal side of things. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that you can say because there's. I mean, one of the key things that my father always said to me was
Yeah,
when you buy and you look at the magazines, the adverts and the things in there, they've got so many lights and it's lit and it does this and you count up the lights and they've got 7 8 different lights, and my dad said, he always said, they're not there telling you how to do photography, they're there to sell the lights.
of course, of course.
And that's what so many people used to forget.
Yeah,
They just sucked in, oh, I need 7 lights, I need this one, I need that one, and and that's not necessarily the case. It's nice to have them if you can afford to have them in your
sure, sure.
studio, but yeah, it's so
In a similar way is today, with cameras, you I don't know what you use, to shoot day in, day out, but mentally, if I was going to use a camera that is 10 years old, nobody would see the difference. The quality of the camera is, the tools they are adding things like eye autofocus, and eye autofocus even when the subject is a spider, and that kind of deal. But fundamentally, the image quality is the same. It hasn't changed much. Your change from 30 megapixels to 50 megapixels, unless you're pixel
and
peeping,
nobody cares about
nobody's
that.
going to see it. Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
nobody
but they
cares.
still have to sell new cameras every
Yes.
year, so
Yeah.
they're pushing that because
It can make your life easier. That's the key thing, and having the right
mhm.
kit can make your life easier.
Yes,
And it doesn't matter if you're using a Mamiya 67 or whether you're using a 10-8 plate camera or you're using a 35 mil. As long as you can do what you need to do with it, that's the key, isn't it? I think that's what it. So you've you've decided to stick with the film,
uh-huh.
and you
I
went.
went back to it.
When did you take that journey back to film? How long ago was that?
About 3 years ago,
Right. What
and
made you
and I,
decide to do that then, Paolo? What was the
that's actually an extremely good question, because coming from digital, I asked my wife. I said, no, 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 no. I'm not gonna. No, I cannot. No, no. You're kidding me. Film? No, no. It was like I had the angel and the devil on my shoulder. It was one was whispering one thing, so go to film, and the other was like, "You're crazy." So because I know film, I started with film. I knew we were developing film with my father. So on one side, that part was great because it demystified how what it is to develop film, and developing film is fairly easy.
yeah,
I would suggest, I met a young woman. I was in New York last week visiting another part of the family, and I did shoot some film, and so I was at the TSA, the safety check, saying, "Look, I have my bag of film here. Don't scan it because you'll ruin it." And before me, there was a young woman, probably 28, and she had also 3 rolls of film that she was
right.
having checked. I said, "Oh, you're using Cinestill film?" So yeah, I just got into it. I love it. Great, awesome. Anybody who is starting now film, stick, points for you. Develop film. But I knew what it was, and I didn't want to go back. But exactly because I was doing the Hollywood portrait, I decided to do this style reminiscent of the 30s. I had it down. I had it decoded, but there was always something that was bugging me. Two things. There was something in the perspective I was looking at the portraits in these art books that was different. It was like, that is, they're so alive. They're seemingly coming, 3D even with one single image. And the highlights were so beautiful, just, beautiful highlights in the hairs and the skin. And I know that those highlights, at that level of contrast, not easy to do. And every time I was going close to that in digital, bam, they were horrible, clipped, So I was like, really? I have to go back to film. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I bought a first 4x5 camera, because why start with 35 millimeter? I have plenty of 35 millimeter cameras. I could have just bought a roll of film, and no, I had to go full 4x5 and create, all kinds of difficulties and develop film day one on 4x5 sheets.
Do you think the aspect ratios, the 16:9 and the old, 5 before and 8:6, the different aspect ratio, do you think that makes a difference?
No, I don't think the aspect ratio makes a difference. I think that their size does. Because, this camera here is using a 127 millimeter lens, okay? And I use it in a small room. And if I am 2 meters away from you, I can frame you, I can create a beautiful portrait. It's going to be a medium shot. But if I'm using 127 millimeter lens on a 35 millimeter camera, a digital camera, at the same distance, I will basically frame just your face. So the perspective is different. Now, on a 4x5 camera, for example, I can use a 210 millimeter at the same distance. So now I have a long lens, more than 200, again, at 2 meter distance, and I'm still framing you even more because of the large circle of the image that the lens is creating. Those lenses are designed to do that. And there is a piece of film that is big enough to receive that. That is a big difference.
Now, the other thing with shooting on film is it's not infinite. You're not going to take a portrait session where you end up with 300-400 photographs. That some people
Probably not
do. How, if you were to do a normal experience session in your studio with somebody, how many photographs do you take?
For a single person, I would say probably around 80, 85.
Right. Okay. So you're shooting what, 4 or 5 rolls?
Between 60 to, well, as you know, on the Mamiya, basically you're going to shoot 10 per roll.
10, yeah.
And then you can change the film back, or just change the film. I have.
How many backs do you have? How many backs do you
I
have?
only have one back because
You only have one back.
No, so I did this thing. I was going to buy another back, which are $150 nowadays, and are getting expensive. And then I found a Kony Omega rapid camera, because this is 127. I still want to have a 90 millimeter for him. In this format, it's fairly wide. It's almost like it's basically a 35 millimeter lens on a 35 millimeter camera. So I wanted a 90 millimeter lens. And I found a Kony Omega, one of those old press cameras, which is in medium format, rangefinder, but it was $75 and had the film back, the camera, the lens. Plus, it's a weird ass camera. It's absolutely outrageous how absurd that camera is. The film advance is a lever you pull out and back in. It's just crazy. I thought, you know what? Instead of having 2 film backs for less than a film back, I'm getting a camera with a lens. So I got that. It's not quite as good as I wanted, but it's okay. So if I need, I load film on this, film on the other camera, I do take a few with the digital. And the trip to New York, let me see. Yeah, the trip to New York allowed me to test a combination. I'm basically using a film from your friends at Ilford, Kentmere 400. And Kentmere is very, 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 very similar to good old HP5, but it costs $2 less per roll. It's developed in Diafine, which is my developer of choice. The 400 film has an 800 ISO speed.
Right.
So I can, and the grain is delicious, very, very small. I don't like a big grain. I don't like to see the grain. So, and so on 35 millimeter, actually, it looks decent. So I'm thinking for the next few sessions, I'm going to do Mamiya, Coney Omega, loaded, another camera with a 35 millimeter and digital. Digital for the stuff that, like window lighting. I have a window there, so it's diffuse, and I know I'm not going to clip those highlights, and for a few other things, just to create what in the movie business is called coverage. But yeah, I try to be conservative on the old joke. They show, where was it, a 120 millimeter, 120 film, 35 millimeter film, an SD card, and they were saying 10 shots, 6 are awesome, 36 shots, 6 are awesome, and then the SD card is like 4,000 shots, 6 are awesome. So it's
Yeah. Would you say to anyone that was starting out then that they should, if you were talking to somebody that was starting out as a photographer, would you say there's an advantage of saying you've got to use a film camera where you're limited?
Right. No, there is. I think it was
Would
actually
you say
Leonardo.
that's an advantage to do that or
It
not?
is. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
what's the advantage? Because I grew up with one, so I know the advantage.
You did.
What
So
would you say the advantage is? What would you?
So first of all, there was a saying by Leonardo da Vinci. I wish I could remember. I basically was saying, convenience is where art goes to die, and I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
When art is easy, first of all, you cannot learn anything if the learning is easy. The only way you learn something is by struggle. And I don't mean struggle, like struggle, but you have to bang your head against a problem, solve the problem, and keep on going. To a certain degree, it doesn't have to be. Again, there is a balance. If it's too hard, then you get discouraged. So you don't want to get there, but you want to work for it if you like it. Because if you don't like it, then let go.
Yeah. Do you think it could be something to do with the anticipation? Because obviously with film, if somebody blinks, it's ruined. So there's got to be a little bit more anticipation of what you're viewing. Do you think there's something in that, or what are your thoughts?
I think it makes you think more, and it makes you pay more attention, because you're getting your and in this, again, there has to be a balance. So if you shoot film, and I was just looking at a camera, you can get a Kodak Retinette for about $15, 15. Okay, so you can get some pretty decent cameras out there if you look for like $50.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, any even a Canon 5D Mark III is ancient by today's standards. It will cost you $650 today. So anyway, so you can you can get a camera, get a roll of film, and I always say don't start getting color film, for crying out loud. Cost $15 a roll. you're gonna die every time you pull the trigger. If you get a roll of Foma, get a roll of Kentmere, shoot it and develop it yourself. But now I don't have a dark room. You don't need a dark room. You just need a changing tent and a little tank. You can learn, make some mistakes. There is a great story that happened recently. A Redditor, one of those guys on Reddit, wanted to try film. He got his roll, put in a 35 millimeter camera. He watched a bunch of videos on YouTube on how to do it. He shot all his photographs, then went to scan his photographs, and everything was blank. So why is everything is blank? And people said, "What? How did you develop it? You develop yourself? You sent to the lab?" And the reply was, "What's develop?" He took the he took his roll of film, put on a scanner light, and of course it was completely ruined the moment he did that. So was that a useful experience? You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. So, but if you have a very short feedback cycle, then you learn a lot. So you shoot your film, you develop it, you scan it, and you look at your result. And that person blinked, say, then you learn to look at the person,
Listen a
don't
little bit
look
more
at the camera, and
pay a bit
you,
more attention to detail. Yeah.
and it's so. And if you're using, and I believe in using a totally manual camera, and I know that I'm in the minority here. Seriously, the ISO is fixed. So you put your 200 ISO film.
Yeah. You're not whacking it up to 56,000 million, whatever it is, on a digital and back down to 100 and whatever, yeah, to play
And
around.
you don't get to change it,
Yeah.
shot per shot, because
It's
it's
fixed.
film. So
Yeah.
now you made a decision, and it's constant for all the photos. So the only two things you have to deal with is aperture and shutter speed.
Yeah.
And if it's overwhelming the first time, it's overwhelming the first time. And the second time, I told you that I couldn't even look at my photos for 2 days. I know overwhelming. You survive. This is not like, your life doesn't depend on it. Yeah, you're wasted $15 in developer and a roll of film, like we never did it before. It happened to
Would
all of us.
would you go back to shooting digital and
I
just
shoot digital. I have nothing against digital. I shoot digital.
you prefer the film? Yeah.
I
It's a passion
enjoy.
for you. It's a different type of passion, isn't it?
I enjoy. There is always a sort of a love hate. There's still a love hate relationship there, in the sense digital is so crisp, okay,
Mhm.
and I believe that we've been ruined by it. We've been, including myself. It's not natural. It's totally artificially and crisped, if that is if that's a word. Um, when I look at film, I really see that natural, organic. It is organic. It's
Yeah, the
gelatin
analog.
sugar.
It's the analog,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
And digital looks amazingly crisp. But if you get good Kodak color film like portrait, and especially if you shoot it on medium format, it's gonna be sharp. It's gonna be super sharp. Um, but there is a one thing. That camera there that I'm using is a Sony Alpha 7 III, has a grid. No, it's a grid, 6,000 by 4,000, and those 6,000 by 4,000 pixels are taking 24, 30 frames per second. Each single frame is exactly the same. It's constant. It's a grid. Our eyes are not grids. Our eyes are chemical. And you know it when you take a roll of film, and every part of the frame is, this thing is just a ribbon that's been coated with silver gelatin. At any spot, here, that gelatin is different. It's just
Yeah.
randomly distributed. That is how life works. That's how our eyes work, our skin works. You can have two twins, two identical twins, two different personalities. Why? That's and so that's what I like of. You can take 35 frames exactly with the camera lock with the same lighting, nothing is moving. Each one is different.
Yeah, slightly different all the time.
Slightly
So
different.
where do you see yourself being then in the next X amount of years? Have you planned on, is there a plan there for yourself? I mean, obviously you've got the passion for film. I can't see that changing anytime
Uh-huh.
soon, and that's fantastic. Is there a plan for you of what you would like to do and what you'd like to achieve? Is there an end goal, or is it a never-ending goal?
That's an interesting question. I want to get better. I just, it's been a fairly recent development that after doing beauty portraiture for a few years, I moved also into the boudoir field, which I love. I love because we're talking about the emotional part of what we do, the emotional power. I think a boudoir is really a field where um, the, you have the artistry, the glamour, and very, very powerful emotional content there. It's a very delicate arena. It's very personal. I really entered with tiptoeing very, very carefully. I want to get better at that. I want
Do you
to get
find the imposter
very good.
syndrome there now? Is that totally passed with you? So you're comfortable to do that?
I don't feel I'm an imposter. I feel that I can get better.
Right.
Um, I'm not.
What would you
I'm not
like to
as
improve then? So when you're talking about boudoir for you,
yeah.
what would you like to improve? Would you like to improve the technical or the connection? What is it?
It's more the posing. Still want to be. I get easily overwhelmed by all the details. And sometimes I look. It's like, "Ooh, I missed. I should have asked her to turn just a little bit. Uh, it's good, but it could have been. That equal a little slight turn. It would have been really good.
Uh-huh.
Posing in an expression. I know that my clients enjoy the sessions completely, and they come out of the session, charged, emotionally excited. But there are a few times where I'm not able to elicit the kind of expression that I want. So
Okay. So it's just that improvement, and that's time, and that'll come. It comes with it's like anything. The more you do it, the practice, isn't it? And it will come to the. Mind you, sometimes it might never come because you suddenly go, well, are you striving for a perfection that other people assume are absolutely beautiful, and then it's just in your mind again? Could that be, or do you think it
yeah,
isn't?
but you know how many of the photos I mean, maybe not, maybe it's not your case, you'll tell me, but I know that I have a fairly large collection of photos that I had to reject because they were not good enough. So in the bucket there are enough photos that are good, but then there is probably an equal number, if not higher, of rejects. And I'm saying sometimes are not because they're not technically right or posed right. Sometimes it's just the expression isn't there. It's just
Yeah,
not lively enough, or just not. There are moments where the face is halfway between one thing, and it's like, why did I take it?
yeah, yeah.
Does it happen to you too?
I suppose so. Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I think you're probably more conscious of it with film than you are when you're doing digital, because with you're right, digital just allows you to be lazy. It does. And you can there's so many little shortcuts you can take. You don't have to go and backwards and forwards with a light meter or check things or do things, because you can just go bang bang bang. Oh, hang on, that's too bright. Right, now I'm ready to, you can do all sorts, and that's the cheat of it all.
Well,
When
and truth.
you know that you can take it first time and be right with film, if and you can do it with digital. And so, yes, it does allow everybody to be lazy.
No, and
So then there is
truth
more
be
throwaway
told,
because of that.
truthfully, I prepare enough that, um, and that's why I like the studio. I don't need to remeter
No,
things
and
that often.
I don't think I won't say this out loud, but I'll say it to the world. I can't remember the last time I used a meter in the studio, because I've lived in my studio for, forever. Yeah. And
Spot meter.
yeah, but I mean, I know, I just, the lights that you've got, the position on the floor or
Yeah,
wherever they
exactly,
are, how far away from you know what it's going to
exactly,
do.
exactly.
It's years of practice, and that's
But it is the expression. are you are you familiar with the work of George Horrell?
no, no. I will look at him up.
I'll send you some information. So he's the guy who really defined the Hollywood portrait of the 1930s, and this guy was working for most of his time on with 8x10 cameras. He
Hmm.
shot Clark Gable. I shot Greta Garbo. He shot Jean Harlow, Joan Crawford, 33 times, um, all the stars. And this is 8x10, and they had basically two photos on two sheets on each loader, and you had to load everything before. It's a and it's a piece of furniture of a camera, no?
Yeah,
And his photos are just amazing. He would take 10, and they were all masterpieces. And of course the thing is, if this is the camera, this is the camera looking at you, he will be next to it. He wouldn't be behind the camera, of course, because then when you load the sheet, there is nothing you can see. There is no visible picture, but he will be next to the camera, talking to the subject, ready with the bulb, the little squeeze bulb. At the right time, he would take it. No, they couldn't make stinkers. He had his share of rejects. And I'm thinking, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it?
yeah. That's one of the key things about
I don't think we have that mentality
and
anymore.
that's the beauty of a tripod as well, isn't it?
Of course,
You don't have to be looking through the camera.
don't have to hold it all the time.
Once you know where the camera is, you don't
Yes,
need to look through it to press the button. You can be
yeah,
communicating with the person, and I think that's what I learned from film. That's the camera, you communicate with the person, so you can see them. Um, yeah, I mean, we had photographers in the
of course. That doesn't lead to lifestyles candid photos. That's okay. But we are not always doing that. I think actually that in many regards, the candid is masquerading a lack of confidence in exposing and directing.
course, yeah,
After all, yeah, and so you're relying on uh, the client doing their thing instead of guiding them and being deliberate.
you can't do a candid portrait shoot truly
Yes,
the same way. A portrait shoot, in my term, a portrait is a single thing of a person.
right.
So a candid shoot is like thousands of pictures in a montage of something, and it's a totally different thing
And
from
you can
portrait.
mix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can mix things. So
And
you can
talk
add.
about the position.
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of people will want a wedding done, and they want traditional pictures of signing the register or in a beautiful dress in a church or wherever it might be, and not one outside a beautiful castle in the UK or, you know, some beautiful building in America.
Yeah, you guys have castles.
Yeah, we've
Yes.
got the castles.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I photographed a lot of weddings at a lot of castles in my life.
Yes.
Yes. And, you know, and that's got its place. But then equally so, the couple want that journalism of lots of things going on that they didn't see. And it's all got its place. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of it. It's all got its place.
No, exactly.
But for true portraiture is what we're talking about. It's that singular, isn't it? That one time.
Yeah. I just admire that kind of talent. And, you know, talent, we call talent, but it's not something that happened like this. You know, anybody who has developed that ability, sure, he was very good at guiding people, and you can tell. But to be able to say, all right, okay, we're done. He would do that. He would go to Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner just after the Romancing the Stone success. They called him. It's like, okay, yeah, you do this. That's great. Perfect. Click. And said, okay, let's do one more just because of the other side of the. All right, done. Bye. And the producers would say, George, what are you doing? You asked me to take their picture. I took their picture. No, but you just did two. Yeah, those are good.
They'll be fine.
This is Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. You have to do more. So, okay, fine. And he did spend another 20 minutes
just to appease the other people.
Son of a gun, the one that he took us. Yeah, that was the one that they said, oh, that was the best. I'm not saying we need to be like that, but a tiny bit, you know, being so deliberate, so, you know, observant that we say, oh, I got it. Great. And, you know, in filming, you don't look back at the camera. You got it or you don't.
So having that ability and then understanding your client and understanding what they want, that ability to observe is going to almost guarantee the results, isn't it?
If you can do it, yeah. And so the next ingredient is practice. You have to practice because you only know if you got it after all those moments were like, oh, yeah, you know, and this could have been so good. That's why I do, you know, I try to work with models when I don't have, you know, clients here. So, well, okay, let's try these other things. You gotta
constantly learning, evolving.
Yeah, and there are always things you can do with lights. There are always things you can do. Well, if you're using film, different film stocks, different techniques. You know, using black and white film with a yellow or orange filter in front of the camera, for example, all those things. That's the beauty, isn't it? Though,
yeah,
Andrew, it's infinite
thing that you can, you know, as an industry, you can play and enjoy forever. And yeah, and to be honest, Paolo, I hope you carry on enjoying it forever as well, because it's obviously a passion. You can see the enjoyment in your face just talking about it, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
We are blessed. We are blessed.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, Andrew. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cool.
I had fun.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, if you could just do me one favor, and that would be to like and subscribe. And I'll do my best to make sure Behind the Lens finds the best professional photographers from all over the world so we can enjoy their life stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.